little over 4 years.
Mhm.
And I really like where I'm at. It's in a really convenient area. Um, where I'm right in the middle of Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like conveniently located. And so it's like when there is something big going on or people do come to Texas, they drive literally right past my apartment. So it's like
Ah,
you can't really beat that. So
yeah, you're like right in the middle of everything, which I
mhm.
think is nice. I think that's a really nice thing.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're ready, I'll do the intro and we'll jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you're ready.
Cool. Here we go. Sure. Now that I think about it. Yep, cool. All right, here we go. Welcome back to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest coming all the way from the East Coast. We've been getting a lot of Boston and Boston area love recently. It's been really cool. We've had, I think, so far this year, four musicians from the New England area, which is really interesting. And I love it so much. But we have Ashley Jordan joining us. How's it going today, Ashley?
So good. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to
Yeah,
be
absolutely. I'm
that's
really
part of the Boston love that's been going on lately.
yeah. It's so bizarre. I like like the last there are at least three or four musicians this year, all been both from Boston or the area, like the surrounding area, and it's like I just don't know where it's coming from, but
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very
nice,
cool.
nice. So you grew up out or in the suburbs of Boston. We'll call it the suburbs just to make it
Exactly.
easy.
Yeah, the suburbs. Exactly.
Oh, so what was it like growing up outside of a big city for you?
Good. It was really nice. I mean, the little town, that I spent a lot of my time in is this little town called Harvard, Mass. It's like Apple Town, Apple
Mm,
Country. And I always laugh when I would say to people because, like, when you were saying about Boston, is they're
yeah,
like, "Oh yeah, yeah, Harvard Square," and I'm
yeah,
like, "Close."
yeah.
You are so close. The thing that was so confusing is I grew up like street performing literally in Harvard Square, but then I would say
Hmm.
from Harvard, and they're like, "Oh, you're from here," and I'm like, "No, no, no," and then I'm just like, "Yeah, sure, whichever." I mean, both.
Yeah.
It
I
just confusing. Yeah.
I'm almost starting to think that that Boston accent, like that traditional Boston accent that people think of, doesn't actually exist because it's like
Yeah.
I talk to you, I don't hear it at all. And
Yeah.
like my sound engineer who I brought up before we jumped on here, I heard it a little bit when we first met, but he had also lived in Boston for like 30 some odd years and you
Yeah. Yeah.
know, and but like most of the, I've not heard like a traditional Boston accent, so I don't even know what it means.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. The people that I hear it the most in is like from the Dorchester, like that they're from a very particular area where I hear it and I'm like, oh my God. And some people say they hear it or they don't hear it. My mom's like a Kansas City, Louisville
Hmm.
girl, like Kansas girl. And so, and it's such a weird mixture. It's the funniest thing, like with my dad and my mom and their
Yeah,
two like her kind of southernish voice and then it's just I think accents and stuff are so funny and
yeah.
so different with it. But yeah, I don't know if I ever really caught on with that at all, other than yeah, just street performing. I would hear it a lot. I'd hear people with that kind of sound.
Hmm.
It's really interesting. But yeah, it was very confusing between the two Harvards. And I finally was just like, whichever. There'd be times where I'd literally get up to perform someone. They're like, an Ashley Jordan from, Harvard University. And I'm like,
No.
sure, I'm also a lawyer, like, on part-time. Like they
That's
made it
so
and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna correct you. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to let it go. You got to figure out
Yeah.
what hill it's worth dying on. Like I've done that with my last name. Like people mispronounce my last name all the time, and it after a point, it's just like sure,
What is the actual appropriate way, correct way of saying your last name? I feel like,
quiet. So like be quiet.
okay, because I totally pondered that as well. I was like, I wonder how that's pronounced.
Yeah. Well, like it's for me the if you get it close, it's like okay, you're cool. Like it's fine. It's when you start adding in
Like,
letters that aren't there, it's like Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's too far. You've taken it too far, you guys.
Yep. Yep. So growing up in Harvard, what was it like you, well, I mean, obviously it's a small town, but what was it like growing up in Harvard?
Yeah, I mean, it's very quiet there. I mean, I used to laugh because in one of the like only stores there in the general store, they had a shirt and it was like, the funniest like saying, like nothing ever really happens in Harvard. And it was just like the funniest saying, or like when something happens, but nothing ever really happens. And it's just like Harvard. And I'm like, that's so perfect. It's just like the quintessential, like perfect little town. I mean, it was a really nice town to grow up in. It's very quaint and quiet.
Mhm.
And heck, there wasn't a lot to do,
Yeah.
when I was growing up. So naturally, the songwriting and the music, and that was such a big part of like my dad's side. My grandfather on my dad's side was a country,
Mm,
bluegrass. I don't even know
nice.
what you call him, Americana kind of singer. And on my mom's side, like they were all very big country people, Kansas and Wichita. And like I would hear that music growing up, and we'd visit there like every summer and spend my summers with them. And
Nice.
yeah, the country music and all the different types of music really came from both sides. And yeah, there wasn't that much to do in Harvard, but it's such a beautiful, quaint little town. And, it was a good place to be creative and like
Mm.
get bored so that you could find things to do. It was
Yeah. 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 So when did you kind of find out that you could sing or that you wanted to sing and perform?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think so. I mean, I always grew up just loving music because my parents had a lot
Mhm.
of music in the house, and I would always sing along with different things, but I was like very like painfully shy. So I never wanted anyone to hear if I was singing or doing any of those things. And we had a good family friend who played guitar and sang and wrote his own like music and stuff. And so we would kind of like do stuff, kind of secretly, like,
Mhm.
I'd kind of like sing along with some of his stuff. And then one time, like my family had not heard me sing. Like I just flat out refused. Like I was so stubborn. It was like almost like the more that they wanted me to sing for them, the more that I wouldn't. It's just one of those things. But
Yeah.
talent show at my school, I think it was like the sixth grade, literally. And I
Mhm.
signed up for it. And I said to my mom and dad, like, oh, I'm gonna do the talent show. And my dad's like, what are you gonna do? Like hula hoop? Like, what do you, like, yeah, dad, I'm gonna get up there and hula hoop. Like, what, like, yeah. So they just had, that's how, like, they just had no clue because I would not sing for them. They're
Mhm.
like, there's no chance that if she won't even sing for us, there's no way she's gonna sing for a crowd of people. And so I got up to do it, and they came to the show, and they're just sitting in the audience, like,
What?
what?
What? Where did this come from?
Yeah, like who is this person? Like two totally different people. And that I think is just kind of what just kicked it off for me is I just love to sing. I actually did like it was like an Avril Lavigne song, so funny.
Nice.
But I just love to sing, and I had to work on the shyness and all that stuff. And that's where the street performing kind of came into play. And I started writing my own stuff and playing out on the street. I'd met a guy who was a street performer, like a subway
Mm.
street performer,
Mhm.
one of the most gifted players I'd ever seen in my life. Like I saw him every time that we get off the
Yeah.
subway. And like it just heard him and went to an open mic, heard him again. And I was like, okay, I have to meet this guy. And he's just like passionate singer songwriter. And I was like 13 or 14 years old. I just walked up to him. I'm like, I want you to teach me how to play like you.
Mm.
Like, I want to be you. Like, and he was like, cool. Like, yeah, let's write. And at first, my parents are like horrified because I'm like 14 and this guy,
Right.
he had a very rough look to him,
Yeah.
like tats everywhere, a shaved
As
head.
most street performers tend to
Yeah. And
have.
so they
Yeah.
were just like, Ashley, what's going on?
Yeah.
But it was the
Honestly,
thing. Yeah, it was the
hon
best.
honestly, street performers watching like street performing videos is like one of my guilty pleasures on YouTube. Like
Yeah.
I'll get sit here like after this, for instance, let's say I'll jump on YouTube and before I know it, it's 2 in the morning and I've watched like every street performing video released in the last year and a half. And I don't know. I enjoy it. So
It's so great. It's so entertaining. People wouldn't believe the kind of talent that's there. And it just amazingly enough, I just reconnected with him after like literally like I think
mm,
like 10 years, and we like wrote a song together the other
nice.
day. It's been so long since I'd seen him, but he was the reason that I really like wanted to be a songwriter and a performer. And he was just so passionate and just amazing with his music. His name's John Gerard, and I think he's
Mm,
kind of coming back into music again. And so it's such a cool synergy. So I think it was from a bunch of different angles that I just loved the music. I had the passion, and once I learned guitar and then the music and the lyrics, it kind of just all meshed together, and
yeah.
came up kind of naturally, I guess. And but yeah, it was pretty cool. And having a mentor like that, I was like pretty lucky as a kid to have access to someone that talented who could help me progress forward. I
Hmm.
think big piece that a lot of artists need, like somebody that they can, take their stuff to, or have them show them that next level up, because as
Hmm.
artists we're always developing, we're always growing. It's never like just the end. Like you're always consistently trying
Yeah.
to get better. So it was
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so with your shy, you mentioned that you were really shy as a young kid. Was there like a moment that you kind of realized that, hey, I think I'm over my shyness, or was it just so like gradual that it was just kind of like,
Uh,
yeah.
that's a really interesting question. I think that it was always like this thing where it was like two different people. It was like
Mm,
me when I was not doing music and not,
mm,
having any attention on me, which I pretty much still prefer.
mm,
I guess I'm one of those like introverted extroverts or whatever. Like I'm just like,
okay.
it's odd. And I don't know if there was ever a light bulb moment where I'm like, I've got this, because when
Yeah,
you're an
yeah.
extrovert, you're just like, oh God, like my social battery, like I need to. But I think there was a couple times, like different performances, where I realized, okay, if I can get up and I can play for 2,000 people and 40,000 people, I can do this. Like almost pep talking yourself for like normal day situations. My thing was more like social anxiety when
Mm,
I was younger, and it made sense for me to like kind of come out of my shell when I was performing. But then in other instances that had nothing to do with music, it was like right back in the shell again. So I had to
mm,
figure out a way of like merging the two worlds, because
fair.
my mom would be like, what, you just got up in front of, and then you won't even walk across the hallway to like go to the bathroom because there's like people there. Like it was the funniest thing. You're just like, what's going on? But yeah, I wish there was a light bulb moment, but I
Yeah,
think it's gradual. Yeah,
yeah.
very funny to watch from the outside looking
Yeah,
in.
fair enough. It's just it's a question I like to ask because it's always kind of interesting. I see a lot of musicians that deal not necessarily shyness, and most of the times it's like stage fright, but that's very much to me that's very much shyness in a kind of a different form, I guess, and you know just kind of those initial steps to get over the fear of getting on stage and whatnot. And so I always kind of like to dive in on that a little bit. So,
Oh, yeah, I think that's a huge piece. And I think one of the best things you can do is almost like get in like a zone.
mm,
Put yourself in like a zone, because if you don't, it's like I think too, people with anxiety, you you think about all of these imaginary situations of bad things that could happen. And I'm like,
mm,
you got to shut down your entire brain and just think about the music, because I think that's where people kind of psych themselves out. They're like, oh, I'm thinking about this. I was thinking about this. I'm like,
yeah,
don't think about any of those things. Think about the song and getting through that moment, because
yep,
like do that, it's like
right, right,
so good. But
yes.
all had those situations. I mean, I remember as a young kid, even just having to get up in front of a class and do like a presentation. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna barf. I'm gonna barf. I can't do this. And my mom would be like, you
You
like
just
it's
got off stage. What are you talking about? Yeah.
talking about, yeah, but because it had nothing to do with music and it had
Mm,
nothing to do with what I deemed that performance world, it was like
mhm,
funny. But yeah, I think over time, it's just the more that you get comfortable with yourself. And I think almost in a way, just stop caring like
mhm,
what other people are thinking or not thinking is the best hurdle you can semi get over, so that you're not like thinking about all these potential outcomes that haven't even happened.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
it took me a long time, but I respect any and all people who put themselves out there in any way, whether that's performing, like comedians, like any type of performance where you're in front of people.
yeah,
It takes a lot to just really like trust in yourself and not care and put yourself out there. Social media videos, like it's hard. So I
Hmm.
respect anybody in performing arts because it takes a lot. It really does sometimes, you know.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I'm not a musician or anything, and I dealt with like as kids have or as growing up in grade school and all that stuff and having to do like presentations like you had mentioned. It was like, nope, nope, I hate doing this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do
Yeah,
it.
you're like pass, pass.
Yep. And then this past summer or this past fall, actually, October's in the fall. What am I talking about? I was at a music festival and they asked me to do like a live podcasting thing. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I was like really apprehensive the day leading up to it because it's like, oh man, I all that stage fright and stuff started coming right back. And then I got up there and I was like, huh, that stage fright just went away. Like it
That's
was good.
awesome.
So but then I realized it was a lot of like-minded people that, yeah, they were there to see or listen to music and see performances,
Yeah.
but I like the vibe was just right. And it probably also helped that I killed a 12 pack of beer, but who knows? Yeah,
No one know the other part. It's good.
right, right, right. It was an
I get it.
interesting day,
Oh,
but
it's hard, and I agree with you. It's like you have that moment of like, oh no, like
yeah.
that panic thing that's about to happen. And you're like, no, no, don't panic. But I think the best thing that I've figured out with it is like the most important thing is like what you just said, like the creative people aren't
Hmm.
there to judge. Like they just aren't. Like most creative people are so in their head thinking about their own things and they're just there to just enjoy and
Yeah.
know going to be there as like that inner critic. Like the way that we talk to ourselves is not the way that other people are thinking about us. And it took
Mm,
the longest time to figure that out, that like that internal story that we tell ourselves is really not what someone else is spending their time doing. And if they are, that's a whole other issue for them. But
right, right. I 100% agree.
so it is
100%.
hard. But
Yeah.
I love that you just kind of like relax into it and you just kind of let it happen because that's when the beauty of the moment just kind of happens, you know?
Yeah.
It's that's
Yeah.
really
Absolutely. So after the talent show, yep, that's the word I'm looking for, talent show. Was it just straight to the races then, or was there kind of like a gradual learning process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a learning process. Then I started doing like formal like vocal lessons with like a
Hmm.
coach and everything. And that was like a huge game changer. I'm so glad that I did that. And I did that literally for years and years and years and years. And that is one thing that I'll always say to musicians is to make sure you do because that your voice is an instrument. It's your instrument, and it's so important to take good care of it, just like the way that you take good care of your body and your mind. And like, I was so glad that I did that because there were so many times where I was like singing when I was younger and like, oh, this feels good. Oh, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And learning that distinction was so important. Like learning from my guitar mentor, John. There was a lot of people that I worked with and played with, bandmates that I learned from. Yeah, I just feel like it's all a part of like the journey. And when you collaborate with like others and you just, I mean, it was like I would play anywhere, any place, anytime, like festivals, coffee houses, like it was like hundreds and hundreds of shows. And the street performing really helped the whole shyness
Yeah.
problem. Because people literally come right up to you like, I'm looking for directions. Like they're like showing me some picture of something, and I'm like, listen, first of all, I'm in the middle of singing a song. Also, I am the last person you want to ask for directions.
Right.
Like
Right.
different directions, and my dad would just be like, oh my god, like that's the other way. But the poor things, I mean I'm sure they figured it out eventually that they were
Yeah.
going, but
Yeah.
I still felt bad about that. But yeah, people come up and like, right in your face with cameras, like yelling requests in your face as you're singing the song, and
Yeah.
like things across the street. There's sirens going on. I mean, it's like ADHD like nightmare, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
That's you bring that up, and I would have never thought about all that stuff because it's like you go out in public and you don't realize how oblivious people are to not social cues and stuff, but just like if it's not in their bubble,
Mhm.
they're not aware of what's going on. And now that you mentioned it, I've seen situations like that play out where somebody's in the middle of a song and a lady or a guy walks up to the singer and starts asking them questions, and they're like trying to have a private conversation, and it's like,
I know,
cool.
it's the funniest thing. They're just like, yeah, oh, well, you probably know. And I'm like, no.
No, no, no. But
Last person you want to ask. But yeah, it was just so funny because yeah, and that is something like learning disabilities like ADD, ADHD,
mm,
and that. So yeah, it was like that learning ground of being like blocking out like the sirens and whatever
mhm,
just happened across the street. The cars all honking at each other, people yelling things back and forth, someone cycling through, like, oh my God. At first I was like completely overwhelmed. Like, what have I gotten myself into? Like,
mhm.
why have I done this to myself? And then at a certain point, it would just became, like you just said, like white noise, and you
Yeah,
just block it out. And it's like the zone thing that I was saying, that I think if people can learn that zone thing, the Zen space is so
yeah,
important, because if you don't, it's like good luck concentrating on the song and being in the moment and having all that emotion, because
yep,
it's a performer. So
yeah,
yeah.
100%. I 100% agree. Um, so when you started playing, writing and playing and stuff, was it originally going to be like that Avril Lavigne song? Because you mentioned during the talent show that it was an Avril Lavigne song. Was it always, were you kind of thinking that, or did you always know you wanted to be like a country musician?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever really knew. I think when I started out, it was kind of just like whatever came to me. Like,
Hmm.
longest time I was kind of more calling it like just singer songwriter.
Mm,
I always loved like, yeah, the Avril Lavigne and the Michelle Branch and the Hilary Duffs and like all of that sound and stuff. But I also really loved like the traditional kind of music. Like,
hmm,
I grew up listening to like Jewel, Alison Krauss, James Taylor,
hmm,
like Josh Ritter, Ellis Paul. Like, I loved the folk people, and Boston
hmm,
is also huge for folk people. So I was exposed to that a lot. I loved that. The open mics, it was like all folk people, and I was very inspired by that. And
hmm,
I think my music was a little bit of that. Like, I grew up listening to my grandpa play, and he was very like Americana, bluegrass, bluesy, like Johnny Cash kind of vibe. So I feel like it just ended up being a big explosion of maybe all those things. And then as I developed and, I started playing with bands and stuff, it changed, and it was a little bit, maybe a little bit more kind of country rock. And I think I've kind of come to that place though, where I feel like I know where I'm at now and
hmm.
the sound that it is now. And it really is just more of like an authentic representation of like who I am and the music that I
Yep,
love. I think it takes that though, because
yep,
I would have known that when I was 15 or 16, like, this is it, this is the way. Like,
yeah,
a kid,
yeah,
so I think it takes time and all those journeys to kind of come together to figure out like what that message is and what that genre is. It's kind of like a melting pot, I guess you
yeah.
could say.
100%. I was gonna mention that, like that finding that authenticity and not worrying about like genres and stuff like that. Because obviously, back in the day, trying to fit a genre was the key part. Like, if you're anything remotely country, you fit in that country label,
Right.
all that stuff. And nowadays, with like Spotify,
Yeah.
there's a million and a half different subgenres. Okay.
Exactly. Thank goodness for the subgenres, and that, yeah, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day, is that thank goodness that that's all changing. And, there's so many amazing artists up at the top there that are, I find very mysterious as well, that
Mm,
people are like, describe what genre that is. And I'm like, I don't even think I could tell you, because, and that's kind of nice. Like, I like that. I think that's cool. And they clearly are bringing to it all of their different like genres that they love. And I feel like that's how it should be. It should be more
mm,
kind of freeform like that. And people stop putting everybody in a box,
yeah.
to creatively, that makes it tough for the writer and in the performer. So I love it. Yeah, I think it's great. And I always respect that about other performers, that we grow and we change. And people have, said that to me and being like, oh, well, it's different. And I'm like, I'm not 13 anymore. So
Mm,
yeah, it's gonna
right.
be a little
It,
bit different probably. But it's kind of nice. I think that's like the progression of life, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's really cool, like the way things are right now, that it you can fluctuate from song to song because it's all about that playlist placement. And there's a playlist for Vulcan death music, just like create a genre, and I guarantee you there's a playlist for it. So,
Exactly. That's
you know,
cool. Yeah. I think that's a great thing too. And for people to be able to search it out and for other things that blend genres to be included in a
yeah,
bunch of different places. And I think that's really cool. I think that's awesome. Like it's definitely, I'm glad that the music industry has like grown and changed in its own right
mm,
too. And it's more open to, the different people and the different sounds. And I think that's what's needed,
yeah, yeah,
Sure.
100% agreed. Um, so let's jump into the new single. You dropped last week, Thursday, right? Maybe something like that.
Wednesday, the 17th.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, all right, I got to
I
try and
think
do
about it
math.
too.
So,
What?
but
Yeah.
it's I want to be that girl. What's the story behind this song?
Yeah, so I had this song like idea kind of kicking around for a while. I had been kind of coming back and forth like writing with a bunch of different people, and I got set up to write with a really incredible writer. His name is Nick Autry, and I had met him through my producer at the time, and he's a big deal in country music and what he does and his producing, and even as a musician as well, he's done some incredible stuff. And we um we had kind of met in the studio like in passing, and we just like really jived. Like I think it's really easy to tell like when you just jive with somebody.
Mm,
And I was like, we should write. We set up a time to write, and literally was just throwing out ideas of like I have this idea about like I want to be that girl, and just kind of describing this story. And we just jived so well, and we wrote the song together in like a day, and it just flowed. I don't know, it just felt like very organic and authentic, and the song just kind of came to life. And
yeah.
he's such a beautiful person and a beautiful writer, and I was just really excited and honored to get to write with him. So I
Yeah.
was a little bit nervous about the session in general, but the song just kind of flowed out, and we did like a rough take of it in his studio. And I was laughing so hard because the one part in the song where it speeds up like the ain't saying ain't coming back, ain't saying that I'm at it. But I did it like a million times. It's like, oh my God, I'm like, I am not going to get this part right. But it was just all those little tiny details
Yeah.
of it made it so fun and exciting to do. And so that was such a great experience. And I got to record it
Mm,
um, that trip when I was in Nashville, and came back with it. And I kind of sat on it for a while because like, I want to release this. I want to put this out there. And I felt like it was like the right kind of time
mm,
to get it
yeah.
out there. And, I'm going through changes in my life, and it kind of like painted that kind of right picture that I was, talking about the small little town. And yeah, I
Mm,
don't know, it just kind of fit the time and the feeling, I guess. And so I'm super grateful for Nick for that. And yeah, it was just a really cool, like very easy, very like authentic experience. And I'm so glad that we were able to write together and just to get to put that out into the world. It's pretty
yeah.
exciting.
That's cool. That's really cool. It's what are the kids saying nowadays? It's a bop. Is that what the kids say nowadays? I don't know.
It probably, I could see that it's a bop. Yeah.
But I was, because when I get prepared for these interviews, I like to spend both my car rides, so my car ride to work and then my car ride back, and I just throw on your playlist and just play it out. And for whatever, not for whatever reason, but I kept coming back to this song. Like it was like, okay, I'd listened to a few songs. It's like, wait a minute, I want to go back to I Want to Be That Girl. Obviously, I'm not a girl. I'm a guy, whatever. But just for whatever reason, I enjoyed it. So
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I feel like it's one of those songs where I think you can connect to it. I mean, minus obviously the girl part of it,
yeah,
but to each their own.
yeah,
But I feel like at least the sentiment in it just being like it's okay to, kind of like we were talking about the boxes, like
mm-hmm,
not be in the box, and kind
mm-hmm,
of things differently. And I think that was something at the time that I was probably like semi peeved about, is that people have like this grocery list in life. I'm sure you can relate to this on some level, is that
Yeah.
people by this age, you should have this and you
Yep.
should, do this and do that. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yep.
That's not how this works, and just kind of revolting against like those things that, at least when you come from like a little town, like people just
Mm.
expect it.
Yep.
Like
Yep. Yep.
they don't care what you're doing, they don't care what it is. Like this is the grocery list, and if
Yep.
you don't have it, I don't know, it
Yeah.
just makes me feel some kind of way. So that was kind of like just saying about being unique and not
Yeah.
letting yourself get put in a box. Like just be you and just kind of forget about everything
Yeah.
else.
Boy, were we raised by the same family or something, or have the same friends or something? Like literally, this is a conversation I had with my grandmother like 6 months ago. She
Oh,
doesn't, and with my grandmother and then my dad's fiance, because that's a whole situation. But none of them can understand why I'm not actively dating right now. And it's like, I
you're like, everybody relax, get off
yeah,
my back.
yeah, it'll happen. Don't worry about it. I'm busy
Yeah.
right now. And
Yeah.
then my grandma used to get on my cousin because she was like 30 and not married. And she's like, "Oh, you're gonna be a crazy old cat lady. You're too old to get married now." And it's like, Grandma, not everybody's 16 when they got married. So calm down.
Yeah. So
So,
you're right. It's like maybe there's just like the times have changed. And so there's
yeah.
just different ideals that go back and forth. And yeah, I feel like that's like the worst, because it makes people feel as if like it's not okay to be in the
Yeah.
position that they're in. And I'm like, everybody's in such different like positions in life. And I mean, either position is fine. Like I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure I said that in the song. Like it's cool to stay here. It's cool to settle down. It's cool to not do that. It's cool
Hmm.
to just let people like do what they will,
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's all about authenticity and what feels authentic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I
So,
was having a internal like struggle with that. And I was
yeah.
explaining that, story to Nick, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I can get on the same page with that. Like, I mean, who hasn't felt like that at least at some point in their
Yeah.
life? Like you were saying, like my friends are dating or my friends are married or my friends, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it have to be that way. It should just be like let people live out the dreams that they have, and whatever those dreams are, whether it's this dream or that dream, that's okay.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
all I like, wanted to like say in it. And I feel like that's interesting that you say that, though, is that yeah, I feel like that's maybe a generational thing that comes up too, is like this and this and this and this and this, and you're like, no, 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 like it's
Yeah.
good, I've got it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I just don't make a whole enough money right now. I can't support an entire other thing. And it's just like, when I'm ready, I'll get there. So,
Like that's what it's all about. Like take your time,
yep. Absolutely. So you'd mentioned with I Want to Be That Girl that you kind of sat on it for a little bit. Was it just like the timing of the release that was the reason, or was there kind of something else going on?
Timing of the release at the time, and I had like a whole other like album that I was kind of in the process of
Mm.
also recording while I was doing that. So I wanted to kind of like just think about what songs I wanted to put out there
Mm.
and what felt like the best at that time to put out. And yeah, it just kind of worked out that this was one that I was like, okay, I know when I'm going to release it. And yeah, I felt like it just kind of the way that the storyline in it flowed, it just kind of flowed with the timeline as well. So it just kind of came pretty naturally, which was nice.
Yeah. 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 Uh, so with this, is it leading to a bigger project, or is it just kind of going to be a standalone thing right now?
Yeah, so I have a lot of songs, like I have like albums worth of music.
Mm.
And I think the way right now is people really like singles. Am I love albums. Is
Yeah.
that an old thing? Possibly. I grew up really liking to listen to like
Yeah.
albums, but at the same time, I'm totally cool with listening to singles too. I mean, if it were up to me, I'd like to do more albums, but I think sometimes it's just like you said, the attention span, and
Yeah.
people like to hear the singles, and like, yeah, I'm pretty like these days. So I mean, hopefully I'll put out a couple more and then make those songs go along with the album that I'm really looking to release as well. Yeah.
Fair, fair, fair. It's one of those things where like neither way is right or wrong. Like it depends on the artist and what their ultimate goal is. Like you, I love albums. Like I have a vinyl player sitting like right behind my computer, and I
Yeah.
like on a Sunday I'll just take a vinyl out and I'll sit down and I'll listen to it. Or well, not sit down because I can't just sit. I have to be doing something. But
Yeah.
you get the point.
Yep.
But I understand that that's not for every musician because, well, A, vinyls are mad expensive to produce, but also, like you said, because Spotify is a very singles driven industry that it's kind of a gamble. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm hoping to put out a lot more of the singles and then probably taking like those singles and putting that along with my other releases for
Mm,
like an hour. But yeah, me because I love albums. Like I just grew up listening to my dad's albums, the JT albums, like Jay Miller, like all the yeah, I would just sit there and listen to like all of that, and I was all about that. But then my attention span, like for music at least, is different than everybody else can sit to listen to that, and but not everyone is like that. So
yeah,
times are a change, and apparently, but I'm cool with either one. Like I'm just happy to just be content out there and the music out that means something to me for sure. It's like a nice like release.
yeah, 100% agreed. 100% agreed. So, I, outside of music, what are you doing? What do you do to kind of decompress, like when you need to take a break?
Yeah, so I find that this sounds funny to say, but just like decompressing guys, just kind of having quiet time. I'll literally have times where like I just won't listen to anything at all. Like
Mhm.
literally like no TV, no sound, just like absolute silence. Sounds like very psycho killer.
Mhm. Hey, I enjoy it too. It is so much
All the
needed.
lights off, sit in the darkness by myself. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's just nice to just sit in the silence. Like sometimes like I'll find myself like writing stuff down or like song ideas, and then I'll like kind of just do that for a couple days and then
Yeah,
come back out of my silence, I guess, silent escape and just kind of come back into things. But I think everybody needs like a
yeah,
break every now and then from just social media and I mean stuff is always coming at you so quickly and I'm just like
right,
my ADHD brain is like, y'all, I need a break.
right,
So I always appreciate that sometimes is just taking a break like that, or even sometimes still listening to music, but just very like my chill kind of like folk music playlist for that kind of mode, recovery mode. But I think that it's helpful. I think everybody should do that
right.
probably.
Oh yeah, I agree. I find myself when I'm at work, just kind of like before a meeting, I'll go into the like wherever the meeting room is, like 5 minutes early, and I'll sit in the dark just to kind of escape everything. And
Exactly.
people
Not hear
they'll come
anyone's
walking in and be like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just enjoying the silence right now because I work for a TV station, and you sit out in that news pit, and if they get going, it's like." You can't even hear yourself think, you know?
Yeah, you're
So,
like, yes, I was enjoying the silence until you walked in.
right, right, right. I was having a really good
I
time
was
and then you
having a
had to
really
ruin it,
good time until about like a second ago.
right?
No,
Right. So,
I
um,
get
yeah, I have a very important question for you. Being
okay.
from the Boston area,
Mhm.
what is your opinion of Aerosmith?
Oh, I've always loved Aerosmith. I've always loved Steven, like his voice is
Mm,
insane. I can't even believe like I caught maybe it was like a YouTube video or
mm,
something where they were putting one of his performances up on the screen and
right,
he was singing, of course, Dream On. And I was like, dude can
right,
still rock. Like I
yeah,
couldn't believe like how, again, taking care of his voice, like he has to. Like there's no way that he doesn't do like vocal stuff and work with people and maintain that because his voice sounded incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
that is no joke song. And he killed it. Like I've definitely always been like a fan of
Mm,
their music and a fan of his voice and his performance. He just is like a killer performer.
yeah.
But
I
I've never, gotten a chance to meet him or anything, but he's insane. I mean,
yeah.
like, what the heck?
Right, right. I asked that question because I've met a few people from the Boston area that grew up right at that time where Aerosmith was played like 5 times an hour on the radio, and they just got to a point where they can't stand it anymore, where it's like,
Oh no.
I've heard enough of Aerosmith from a lifetime, so
Yeah, no, I hear you. You're like, I've heard this song. I mean, they do, I mean, even nowadays that on the radio station, certain things, and they just over and over throw it at you, throw it at you. It's just good marketing, right? I
right.
mean, a good, strong marketing team skills going on there. Yeah, I don't know if I was at that time where I was hearing it all the
Hmm.
time, but
Yeah,
when I did hear it, I was always just super like impressed by how he's like maintained himself and his performance and his singing. I mean, that's no joke.
right.
Like the Olympics of like vocal craziness, like
Hmm.
he still got it. And that's hard to do. So I always commend that. Like he's an incredible singer and performer and artist.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. Um, so other than that, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that maybe I missed or glossed over?
I'm trying to think. So I have some other releases that are going to be coming up this year, but I usually just try to keep everything like up to date, like on my website,
Mm,
ashleymusic.com, and socials like Instagram. And I'm new to TikTok, but I'm figuring it out
right.
slowly. Um, and the only other thing too is I do have a nonprofit
Mm,
that's called Forever Love for shelter animals, shelter dogs and cats. And every year we try to like raise funds just to support local shelters that don't have like state funding.
hmm.
I'm hoping we're going to be able to help again this year. We started it like back in, I think it was like 2018,
Mm,
2019, just because we were just trying to fulfill that need
yeah,
for certain shelters that were like in need of supplies,
yeah,
like dogs coming in and out the door, and cats as well. And so we would just basically in the community try to like get the basic needs met. Like I mean, anything from donations to supplies, and like
mm,
literally truckloads of supplies to take to the different shelters in support of them. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do that again this year, if we have enough supporters and stuff. So if people want
yeah.
to like learn about that or check that out, they can go to the website, and they can find it off of my website, ashleydortonmusic.com.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, let me know if there's anything we can do to help promote. Like if you end up doing the full on fundraiser and stuff like that. Let me know if there's anything we can do to help support that because I have a soft place in my heart for um humane
The furry
societies.
friends,
And yeah, yeah.
yes.
I I
Exactly.
I don't have a furry friend right now, but that's because I live in an apartment and it's an extra $300 a month to have a furry friend,
Oh
and it's
God,
like,
I know. They always do that. That's the
yeah,
worst. Like, come
I-
on, child,
right,
children, just a furry child.
yeah. Well, and it's funny because everything in here is like hard floor, so it's like there's no extra cleanup, guys. Like,
I
what's the point of this? So
on. Like there's so many people with pets and dogs and cats,
yeah,
like, make it easier so that more people can rescue and,
hmm,
help out these rescue dogs. And I always say like, if I could have, I mean, I think the dream would be to like have a huge property and just be able to take
right,
all the dogs that no one's like willing to take. Because that's always what breaks my heart. Right now we have two, but I'm always like scheming. Like I'm like, all right, okay, we'll wait. But
yeah,
I really like to I'd really like to have a bunch if I could,
yeah,
or at least 5 or 6 to
yeah.
start.
Yeah, every time I go on Instagram, our local pet shelter, it's right down the road from me. But
Mhm.
they'll put out like like red alert days when they're over capacity, and it's like, hey, we're like waiving adoption fees because we need people to take these dogs, or we're gonna have to, you know, do
I know.
something.
That's why it gets really scary and trying to it, it's the hardest with the kill shelters. It's like such a sad situation. And I think
Hmm.
if more people can help, even if it's not adopting, but just supporting the shelter so that they can feed the dogs and keep the dogs and maintain them until they can like literally sometimes just a week later find that person that's going to come in and adopt that dog instead
Hmm.
of ladder, because that's not what you want, for
Hmm.
such innocent creatures,
Yeah,
so that's always like our goal, and that's why I'm trying to help in just the way that I can, because I'm like, I would literally walk in there and take all of y'all,
right.
but I'm like, for now, like the most we can do is just go around and try to support with donations and supplies and whatever like that shelter needs, like because those
Hmm.
like we really need, beds, we need blankets, we need food, we need mostly just donations because we need to pay vet bills for the
Yeah.
dogs injured, and so every place is different, and I'm still hoping that we'll be able to do a little bit more of that this year and
Oh,
everything. But I know it's so great, and there's so many different ways you can support, just
hmm.
even sharing a post that's like,
Yeah.
this dog is looking for that, and like sharing it, because then that opens it up to more people who can see it, more people who can come and adopt the dog or foster the dog. So stuff like that. But yeah, it's always a big place in my heart too. And I think the ultimate goal would be to have all the dogs, but for
Right.
now,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
yeah, yeah.
So you'd mentioned that you're gotten more music coming out this year, which is really exciting. I can't wait to, see everything you got. How often are you playing shows right now?
Yeah, so I slowed down a little bit just during the holidays because it just
Mm.
gets crazy and everything. You're kind of coming out of that finally. But I'm going to be doing a lot more like acoustic performances myself, which is really fun because it's really back to my roots and where I
Yeah,
started, which is great. So I have a couple that are going to be coming up during CRS week in Nashville. So like
I'll
the
be there.
oh no way, are you going
Yeah.
to be there that time?
Yep. Well, I just got my media credentials today for CRS. So
My God, that's awesome. Well, maybe
yes.
we'll run into you there. So yeah,
Yeah.
like I think that week, I'm still kind of booking out shows right now, but there's at least a couple
Nice.
like the 29th, and the first, and then I have to fly back. I think the night of the first for a show here. I
Yeah.
didn't and that very well, but I'm hoping that I'll have a couple more leading up to it. But yeah, that's always such a fun, like cool,
Yeah.
crazy week that goes on there. That's so
Nice.
cool to be there as well. That's so
Yeah.
fun.
It'll be my first like music convention because when we first start, like, I got invited to NAM a few years ago, like
Oh, cool.
pre-pandemic, and I just couldn't make it because I was
Yeah.
at a different point in my life, and I was just like, man, I wish I could make it, but I can't. It's yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so I got this invite, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make it work. Like, I don't care if I gotta sell whatever, I'm gonna
Right.
make it
I'm
work. So
going.
yes, yes.
That's
And
the
I was looking at hotels, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go stay at the like where it's at, the Omni, and it's like $1,500 for the whole thing, and I'm like, oh, damn, okay,
like
maybe not the
okay.
Omni.
Yeah, maybe not. There's definitely other places that you
Yeah,
can see there that are lower
yeah,
cost. But yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
know like during certain times I hate that the hotel prices, the flight prices, like everything. It's good to like do stuff in advance before then if you can like sometimes
yeah,
like before they raise stuff. I don't know if that's even like
yeah,
that you can do. But
yeah.
I hear you. Sometimes it's just nuts. Like the summertime, it's nuts. But I know it's so much fun. And CRS week, yeah, I did it last year. And I
Nice.
think, yeah, for the first time last year, and then something that was kind of interconnected with it the year before. But it was so much fun. And I think people are there traveling from all over the place. And there's so many, yeah, media people there.
Yep.
And it's great. It's so
Yeah.
great. I'm so excited for you that you're doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm really excited and can't wait. And I'm talking to the PR, the people that are handling PR. And it's just kind of like, all right, so what can I've never been to CRS, so like, what's the rules, or what can I do? What can't I do? And obviously, like, I mean, I know the basic fundamentals of a lot of that stuff, but it's like, yes, I can book my interviews, but like, is there restrictions on who I can book, or like just a bunch of questions? So
Yeah, that's so exciting though.
yeah,
That's awesome. What are the chances? I know
yeah,
that's coming up so quickly. I was like, oh my
right.
God, like I can't even believe like time just like has been flying lately. But yeah, that's a blast. And when we did it last year, it was like so much fun and just like definitely a fun, busy time in Nashville for sure. Hopefully it'll be a bit warmer. I don't really know.
Yeah,
Like last year it was freezing and we were all dying. But I'm
right,
sure it'll be better than that. I'm left fingers crossed, you
right.
know.
Yeah, it's yeah. Luckily for us, like, I think by the end of February it should be okay, but you just never know. Like, Nashville's a little bit further north, so who knows? So
Exactly. I know. It's like I feel like all the weather people are just like, yep, well, get what you get. So
yep, 100%. That's how it is. Um, but I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me. It's been an absolute blast. I do have one last question I want to ask.
of course.
What is your motivation right now? What is keeping you going as a musician?
That's an excellent question. I think that I always have motivation from I think a lot of it comes from just like my deep love of like my songwriting and then
Mm,
also I think a lot of it comes from just that support that I've had from like my parents and my family throughout my career and that whenever things get tough and things are
mm,
like hard and I'm like this sucks and I quit and blah, blah, we all go through that. Like anyone who says they haven't done that yet, I mean they live a very blessed life, but like I have definitely been in those dark spaces and it's hard, when you're an artist and you're judged a lot and there's a lot of pain that's involved.
mm,
But I think that one of the best things is like having that, really profound support system. My mom and my dad and my sister, are just a huge part of that. And, it's huge. And I think that I always go back to that place when I'm having the tough struggles and the tough times, I come back to that. And, I think that's my motivation. I would say sometimes, yeah, out of stubbornness too. I'm a very stubborn person. I think that
fair,
benefits me.
fair, fair, very fair.
Does it benefit me in other ways? Probably not. But in that one way, I think it benefits me because just out of stubbornness, when people say things or do things, and I'm just like, oh, if you only knew. But yeah, so I think it'd probably be inappropriate to be like, I am motivated by spite, but that's not true. I'm motivated by just a lot of love in my heart and the songwriting and my family's support. I think that's definitely the biggest pieces there. Although the motivated by spite thing's kind of funny. So
Yeah,
we'll keep that in the back pocket for later.
that's the rocket. That's like the nitro booster. Like
Yes.
when you're struggling a little bit, it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's exactly what I needed. So
Just
yeah,
that extra, yeah, that extra boost, right?
right, yeah, yeah. But once again, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please go check out. Um, oh, oh man, I please go check out Ashley Jordan and her song "I Want to Be That Girl." I don't know why I fumbled the bag there, but it is what it is.
You
And
got it. Great.
the link will be there in the description and all that fun stuff. So would really appreciate if you go support her. And once again, thank you all so very much, and we will catch you all later. Cool. Stop recording. Ah.
Stop recording. Stop.